Harper, 20 November 1931. The sand gives way beneath him, not sand at all, but stinking icy mud that squelches into his shoes and soaks through his socks. Harper curses under his breath, not wanting the men to hear. They're shouting to each other in the darkness. You see him? You got him? If the water wasn't so goddamn cold, he'd risk swimming out to make his escape, but he's already shivering violently from the wind of the lake that nips and worries at him right through his shirt, his coat abandoned behind the speakeasy, covered in the shitheel's blood. He wades his way across the beach, picking a path between the garbage and the rotting lumber, mud sucking at his every step. He hunkers down behind a shack on the water's edge, assembled out of packing boxes and held together with tar paper. Lamplight seeps through the cracks in the cardboard patching, making the whole thing glow. He doesn't know why people build so close to the lake anyway, like they think the worst has already happened and there's no downhill from here. Not like people shit in the shallows, not like the water might swell with the rains and wash the whole goddamn stinking Hooverville away. The abode of forgotten men, misfortune separated deep down into their bones. No one would miss them, like no one's going to miss Jimmy fucking Grebe. He wasn't expecting Grebe to gush like that. Wouldn't have come to it if the bastard had fought fair, but he was fat and drunk and desperate. Couldn't land a punch, so he went for Harper's balls. Harper's had felt the son of a bitch's thick fingers grabbing at his trousers. Man fights ugly, you fight uglier back. It's not Harper's fault the jagged edge of the glass caught an artery. He was aiming for Grebe's face. None of it would have happened if that dirty lunger hadn't coughed up on the cards. Grebe had wiped the bloody gob off with his sleeve, sure, but everyone knew he had consumption, hacking his contagion into his bloody kerchief. Disease and ruin and the crackling nerves of men. It's the end of America. Try telling that to Mayor Clayton and his bunch of vigilante cocksuckers, all puffed up like they own the place. But there's no law here, like there's no money, no self-respect. He's seen the signs, and not just the ones that read foreclosed. Let's face it, he thinks, America had it coming. A pale streamer of light sweeps over the beach, lingering on the scars he trailed across the mud, but then the flashlight swings to hunt in another direction, and the door of the shack opens, spilling light out all over the place. A skinny rat of a woman steps out. Her face is drawn and gray in the kerosene glow, like everyone else's around here, as if the dust storms out there in the country blew away all traces of people's character along with their crops. There's a dark sports coat 3 sizes too big for her, draped over her scrawny shoulders like a shawl, heavy wool. It looks warm. He knows that he's going to take it from her even before he realizes that she's blind. Her eyes are vacant. Her breath smells like cabbage and teeth rotting in her head. She reaches out to touch him. "What is that?" he says. "Why are they shouting?" "Rabid dog," Harper says. "They're chasing it down. You should go back inside, ma'am." He could lift the jacket right off her and be gone, but she might scream. She might fight him. She clutches at his shirt. "Wait," she says. "Is it you? Are you Bartek?" "No, ma'am, not me." He tries to pry her fingers off of him. Her voice is rising in an urgent way, the kind to draw attention. "You are. You must be. He said you would come." She's verging on hysterical. "He said he would." "Shh." "It's all right," Harper says. It is no effort at all to raise his forearm to her throat and push her back against the lean-to with his full weight. Only to quiet her, he tells himself. Hard to scream around a crushed windpipe. Her lips pout and pop. Her eyes bulge. Her gullet heaves in protest. She twists her hands in his shirt as if she's wringing out laundry, and then her chicken bone fingers fall away, and she sags against the wall. He bends with her, setting her down gently, even as he lifts the coat off her shoulders. A little boy is staring at him from inside the hovel, his eyes big enough to swallow you whole. "What you looking at?" Harper hisses at the boy, hooking his arms through the sleeves. It's too big for him, but no matter. Something jangles in the pocket of the coat, loose change if he's lucky, but it will turn out to be much more than that. "Get inside. Get your mother some water. She's poorly." The boy stares, and then, without changing his expression, opens his mouth and lets out a screeching wail, drawing the goddamn flashlights. Beams lance across the doorway and the fallen woman, but Harper is already running. One of Clayton's cronies, or maybe it's the self-appointed mayor himself, shouts, "There!" and the men stampede down towards the beach after him. He darts through the maze of shacks and tents put up without rhyme or purpose, all tumbled on top of each other, with barely space for a pushcart to move between them. Insects have better judgment, he thinks, as he veers in the general direction of Randolph Street. He is not counting on people acting like termites. He steps on a tarpaulin and falls straight through it into a pit the size of a piano box, but considerably deeper, hacked out of the earth where someone has set up a semblance of a home and simply nailed a cover into the ground across the top of it. He lands hard, his left heel smacking the side of a wooden pallet bed with a sharp twang like a guitar string snapping. The impact slams him sideways into the edge of a homemade stove that catches him under his ribcage and knocks the breath out of him. It feels like a bullet has torn clean through his ankle, but he didn't hear a gunshot. He can't breathe to scream, and he's drowning in the tarp, falling in on top of him. They find him there, flailing against the canvas and cursing the son of a bitch human driftwood who didn't have the materials or the skills to build a proper shack. The men assemble at the top of the hidey hole, malevolent silhouettes behind the glare of their flashlights. "You can't come here and just do what you want," Clayton says in his best Sunday preacher voice. Harper can finally breathe again. Every inhalation burns like a stitch in his side. He's cracked a rib for sure, and he's done something worse to his foot. "You have to respect your neighbor, and your neighbor must respect you," Clayton continues. Harper's heard him using this line at community meetings, talking about how they needed to try and get along with the local businesses across the way, the same ones that sent in the authorities to tack up warning notices on every tent and hovel, advising them that they had 7 days to vacate the land. "Hard to do respecting when you're dead," Harper laughs, although it's more of a wheeze, and it makes his stomach tighten with pain. He thinks they might be holding shotguns, but that seems unlikely, and it is only when one of the flashlights shifts away from his face that he sees they are armed with pipes and hammers. His gut clenches again. "You should turn me over to the law," he says hopefully. "Nah," says Clayton. "They got no business here." He waves his flashlight. "Haul him out, boys, before Chinaman Aang comes back to his hole and finds this D. Horner garbage squatting in here." And here is another sign, clear as dawn, which is starting to creep over the horizon past the bridge. Before Clayton's goons can climb down the 10 feet to get him, it starts to rain, slicing drops, cold and bitter. And there is shouting from the other side of the camp. "Police! It's a raid!" Clayton turns to confer with his men. They sound like monkeys with their jibber-jabber and arm-waving, and then a jet of flame sears through the rain, lighting up the sky and putting pay to their conversation. "Hey, you leave that." A yell drifts across Randolph Street, followed by another. "They got kerosene," someone yells. "What you waiting for?" Harper says quietly, under the drumming rain and the uproar. "You stay right here." Clayton jabs his pipe at him as the silhouettes disperse. "We're not done with you." Ignoring the rasping sound his ribs make, Harper scoots up on his elbows. He leans forward, grabs hold of the tarp that is still clinging to its nails on one side, and tugs on it, dreading the inevitable. But it holds. Above, he can distinguish the dictatorial tone of the good mayor's voice, cutting through the melee, shouting at persons unseen. "You got a court order for this? You think you can just come here and burn up people's homes after we lost everything once already?" Harper gets a thick fold of the material in his grip and, using the overturned stove for leverage with his good foot, heaves himself up. His ankle bangs against the dirt wall, and a bright flash of pain, clear as God, blinds him. He retches, coughing up only a long, stringy amalgam of spit and phlegm tinged with red. He clings to the tarp, blinking hard against black holes blossoming across his vision until he can see again. The shouts are dissipating under the drum of the rain. He is running out of time. He hauls himself up the greasy, wet tarp, hand over fist. He couldn't have done this even a year ago, but after 12 weeks of driving rivets into the Triborough in New York, he's strong as the mangy orangutan he witnessed at the country fair, ripping a watermelon in half with its bare hands. The canvas makes ominous brittle sounds of protest, threatening to tumble him back into the goddamn hole, but it holds, and he pulls himself gratefully over the edge, not even caring as he scrapes open his chest on the nails fastening the tarp. Later, examining his wounds in safety, he will note that the gouges make it look like an enthusiastic whore has laid her marks on him. He lies there, face in the mud, the rain pelting down on him. The shouts have moved away, although the air reeks of smoke, and the light from half a dozen fires mixes with the grey of dawn. A fragment of music drifts through the night, carrying from an apartment window, perhaps, with the tenants leaning out to enjoy the spectacle. Harper crawls on his belly through the mud, lights flaring in his skull from the pain. Or maybe they're real. It is kind of a rebirth. He graduates from crawling to hobbling when he finds a heavy piece of timber with the right height to lean on. His left foot is useless, dragging behind him, but he keeps going, through the rain and darkness, away from the burning shanty town. Everything happens for a reason. It is because he is forced to leave that he finds the house. It is because he took the coat that he has the key.